Welcome to our event, Be a Better Blogger. I'll give you a quick introduction to what we're going to go through so you know what to expect and you know the formats. Most important information of all, toilets are just down there. So if you need the toilet, feel free to go. I would tell you where the fire exits are, but I haven't got a clue. But I presume that's clues in those lights. So we're going to talk to you about how you can not be a better blogger per se, because I wouldn't presume to tell you that, but be a better blogger when it comes to attracting brands, obviously getting found by the members of the public, and generally speaking, hopefully learning some information which will help your blogging to get noticed by more people. On my right, let's figure out what side I have, we have Adam and Rachel, who are going to talk in the middle for a bit of a case study about some work that they did together. Adam's from a company called Unite, who provides student housing. Rachel was a student, you can see the connection there, and also a blogger, a very nice blog called Handbags and Cupcakes. They work together on a campaign. We'll show you it in the middle and we'll ask them a few questions. And at the end, when we do our Q&A, feel free to ask them questions, obviously us as well. But a quick note about the format. So we're going to talk to you about what's your value as a blogger. And I don't mean that in an existential form, but as in, why would brands want to work with bloggers? Some good practices you can follow, a bit of a case study with these guys. We'll talk about how you can get noticed more by the public and then how you can get noticed more by agencies or brands. We will have a Q&A at the end. I'm not going to drone on for 2 hours, so don't worry. So we'll have a bit of a Q&A. So if you've got any questions about maybe what brands look for in bloggers or what agencies look for or just generally debates, or feel free to disagree with some of the stuff we've said, but save that for the end and we will do a kind of formal Q&A. We just introduced myself and Tamar. So Tamar are a digital agency. We're based over in Chiswick, so not trendy East London like these guys. We work with a number of brands in kind of the retail space, travel space, fashion, that kind of stuff. We do social media and search. None of which I'm going to sell you today, don't worry. But just to tell you about the reason that we talk to bloggers. We obviously work with a lot of bloggers on our brands, both from a social media point of view and from a search point of view. I am also a blogger myself. I hate the term, but I'm a daddy blogger. I've been blogging for 4 years now about my experiences of being a dad, obviously. So I am also one of you, as well as working for a marketing agency. And I will kick off now rather than waffle on too long. So let's crack on. So why do brands want to work with bloggers? Why is blogger engagement, as agencies and brands tend to call it, so big? So a few stats that kind of show your power as a blogger. So there are currently, or at least according to this stat, there are 409 million people who are viewing WordPress blogs a month. Obviously, WordPress aren't the only blog platform, so you can see that would scale up massively when you incorporate all the others. But essentially, take home of that is there's lots of people reading blogs. Hopefully, lots of them are reading your blogs. I'm sure you'd like more of them. I know I would. 57% of bloggers also have more than one blog. So there's a lot of big tries here who are doing a lot of blogging. So there's a lot of competition out there for your audience. The UK has the most frequent online shoppers in Europe. So why is that relevant to you guys? Obviously, online shopping is where most brands, especially in the digital space, are making their money. What does that mean for you guys? £52 billion is spent in online retail sales in the UK this year. Again, why is that relevant to you guys? Well, crucially, 74% of consumers, those people who are spending that money, are relying on social media to guide their purchasing decisions. So they're no longer trusting adverts or more traditional media. They're trusting the reach of their friends, their social connections, people they consider to be influencers, and obviously you guys are a key part of that. So you are big business for brands who want to get seen by their customers, and they're very keen to work with you in increasingly involved ways. So how can you make sure that your work with those brands and those agencies and those people is more effective? So a quick bit about how we're going to sort of structure this presentation. So talking about what's your value. So that's to say when an agency or a brand is approaching you to work with you, you need to know that you as a blogger have an intrinsic value. If we all stick together, we'll all create more value for ourselves. I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. Some good practices for generally writing blogs that will get noticed by both brands and agencies, but also the public. Also helping you get noticed by the public, so how you could do things like SEO, social media. As I mentioned, we are a social and SEO agency, so we can tell you hopefully some useful tips about how you can make sure your blog gets found more in search engines. And then finally, a bit about how you can get noticed by agencies and brands like us, who obviously are spending a lot of time identifying bloggers to work with, and obviously we work out your value in various different ways. So hopefully all of that will be very helpful. So what's your value as a blogger? five or six examples of things that brands would kind of utilize you for as a blogger. So brand reputation and awareness. Obviously, you can help talk about brands and their products, and that helps them to generate awareness of their products. Pretty basic one, but frankly, it's probably the one that brands care most about. The SEO value. So it's not about SEO, or not just about SEO for getting people to your blog, but your blog has a strength that can help a brand to increase their own SEO value, especially when you link to them, you talk about them, you provide them with coverage. You are giving them SEO value, which has a very easily calculable monetary value. So again, if you're approached by brands who are looking for SEO value out of you, you need to know that you can happily make a return for yourselves out of that, and you can know what the do's and don'ts of it. Product reviews and feedbacks. Obviously, product reviews is a basic one, but feedback for the brand themselves is a very useful thing. So if they send out products for you to review, you give them some hopefully truthful and honest feedback. That's the sort of thing that brands love, because it's not just about looking online to say what people are saying about them on review forums. Hopefully, nice, beautiful blog posts that talk all about their products are much more helpful and useful bits of feedback for them. You can help them to increase their social media presence, especially if you're tweeting about your post or tweeting about your interactions with these brands. They'll ask you to include their Twitter handle or their Facebook link. So that obviously helps them a lot as well. You can provide referral visits. So hopefully if you've linked to that brand or product in your post, then some of your blog readers will say, oh, I like that product as well. I'm going to click through and I'll find it. So there is a value to the traffic that you generate for those brands. And obviously reputable endorsements and advocacy. So again, it helps to generally increase the sentiment of that brand if there's lots of people talking positively about it. Going back to the SEO point that we were making earlier, Google increasingly is trying to make sentiment part of how they rank brands in their algorithm. They haven't necessarily got it perfect yet, but they would like to get to a space whereby they aren't ranking brands who are unpopular or who people are saying bad things about. So having lots of bloggers saying nice things about their products provides them another kind of intrinsic SEO value. So a little bit more about the details. So some good practices that you can follow in order to make your blog more well-found, readable, all that kind of stuff. So frequency and length. As a blogger myself, I know bloggers who blog probably once a month. I also know bloggers who post several times a day. I don't know where they get the time to do it, but there's obviously a variety of different frequencies. From a length point of view, if you're looking for SEO benefit, you need the blog length of at least probably 150 words to have any benefit with Google. Anything more than probably 500, you're looking at potentially, if we're talking from a purely SEO point of view, if you're going to write a 5,000 word thesis about your favorite beauty product or something like that, you may, for instance, be better off splitting that down into 3 or 4 posts and getting value out of all of them rather than doing a War and Peace in your blog post. So keep length to a sensible amount. Plus, also you've got the readers to consider as well. So no one's going to sit through very few people will sit through 5,000 words on a makeup product if they can go for a punchier video or a Vine or something like that. Sharing frequency. Obviously, I think one of the things I tweeted earlier from one of the events we went to at Social Media Week, for every hour you spend producing your content, you should probably spend a couple of hours promoting it, because whilst the internet's great for socially crowdsourcing responses and viral and all those good things, they don't usually get shared and discovered by themselves. So the more time you put into sharing and promoting your posts, the more return they'll get for you, which is hopefully a bit of a common sense one. Allow engagement. And again, that should be common sense, especially with most blogging platforms being built for it. But providing buttons for people to tweet and share and Facebook and all those kind of things for your blog posts will encourage that. So people won't kind of search them out themselves. If you want them to tweet about your posts, make those tweet buttons nice and big on your blog posts. Don't provide or don't shove too much promotional content down people's throats. I have a bit of a rule myself of I try to do at least 2 non-paid or non-promotional posts for every paid one I do, simply because, I don't know, I guess I think integrity is probably a bit of an issue if you start posting non-stop promotional content. So you need to make sure you've got a balance between your kind of PR and your normal content. Responsive design sounds like a fancy term, but ultimately it means making your site look good on a mobile or a tablet. Again, it should be a no-brainer these days, simply because half your readership, I'm guessing, if not more, are probably on a tablet device. So making sure your blog actually looks good on those devices ensures that you can actually get your content seen by the right people. You've also got an extra SEO benefit in responsive design. Google have recently changed their algorithm to ensure that sites which are responsive and look good on a mobile have a little bit of an extra boost in the ranking. So it's another sort of a reason for you to make your site responsive. And image quality, probably more of a readership issue than an SEO one, but make sure your images are nice. Break up your posts with Images also help to be indexed in Google, so they're another way for people to find your blog. I've got one blog post which I have no idea about why it's so popular, but ultimately most of the traffic comes from a particular image I put in the post, which I happen to give a good title, and now lots of people find the post through that title. Bit of a weird one, but frankly I'm not going to turn away the traffic. Disclaimers and copyrights. One thing you should definitely make sure of these days, because people are getting hotter and hotter on it, is usage of images. If you're not using your own images, make sure you seek copyright-free imagery, simply because the original owners of that image could come along and they could threaten to sue you or to, offer all sorts of nasty notices for you. So generally speaking, make sure your usage of images is legal and fair. And there are lots of free image databases out there. Both places like Flickr, where you can search for Flickr's Creative Commons, which essentially means you can find images that people have said they're happy for you to use in the public domain. There's a bunch of stock photography sites that now offer a bunch of free images. Plus, obviously, you've got the incentive to just take the images yourself. So unless you don't own a camera, which is probably very few people these days, stick some of your own images in there. Disclosing sponsored content. I expect some of your questions at the end maybe around this. The rules or the advice from people like the ASA around how you should disclose whether you've been paid to review something or to post something or to have a relationship with a brand. They're all still very woolly in terms of their enforcement, especially if you're not sort of a big, powerful brand or blogger. But obviously there's the recommendation that you put hashtag ad or hashtag spawn on posts when you tweet them or put them on Facebook. It obviously applies to YouTube and vloggers and all that kind of content as well. But generally speaking, the recommendation these days is if you've been paid to say something, you should disclose that in some way that makes it obvious to readers that you have that kind of relationship with that brand. Particularly, it's particularly hot in the YouTube field at the moment because of things like advertising to youngsters. People, they're talking this morning about the YouTubers who have all these promotions with cereal companies, and they're all suddenly doing these amazing blogs about them eating cereal, and the ASA getting upset, understandably. So generally speaking, decide what your policy is for disclosing sponsored content. Also, I'd advise making that upfront and honest in your blog itself. I have a page on my blog where I kind of lay down my rules for brands and say this is what I will do, this is what I won't do, here's how to contact me. Obviously, if you want brands to work with you, you've got to make it easy for them to find you, but you might also, at the same time, save them some time and actually tell them what you will and won't do. That's not to say they'll all listen, and I still get a bunch of crappy posts from people saying, hey, share my press release, but at least if you've gone some of the way there, you could find out the people who've actually put the effort into reading a bit of your blog. I don't know about you guys, but I still get a ton of people who send me an email that says, hey, I read your recent post on insert post title here, and I really think it engages with our brand. And you think they've gone through a little bit of effort to find you, but they clearly use the same approach for everybody. So why not make it easier for them by actually helping them to find out how to contact you? In terms of tools, there are tons of tools you can use, most of which are free and easy. The most basic and obvious is Google Analytics. So most of you will probably have analytics built into your blog platform. I know I do. You can obviously have third-party analytics tools as well. Google, being the multinational giant that they are, have obviously dominated the analytics space as well, but their Google Analytics platform is very good and ultimately free. You can find tons of stuff on there. You can find out who's sending you traffic. You can find out what they're reading, what they're doing on your blog. There's tons of stuff you can do with Google Analytics, and if you haven't got it already, I'd encourage you to get it and have a play around with it. Excuse me. You've also got Google Search Console, which is what they've recently renamed Google Webmaster Tools. And again, you just install a little bit of code on your website and you can get all this extra added information which Google will give you. They give you, for instance, keyword insights, which Google recently took away from Google Analytics. So they claimed for privacy reasons they're no longer telling you what keywords led to your website. However, in Google Search Console, you can now get some information about what search terms your site is appearing for in Google, even if not necessarily click-through data. But there's a ton of stuff in there. You'll also find out things like if Google have contacted you about dodgy links to your site or some content that maybe upsets them, they will contact you through the Search Console. So I'd urge everyone to have that and install it. Also, there's lots of other free tools from Google. So Google Trends is another nice one. You can find from Google Trends what people are searching for. So if, for instance, you decide that SEO is going to be a big part of how you attract people to your blog, you may decide to actually start purposely posting content that is relevant to searches. How do you find that out? Google Trends is a good one. So you can type in different search terms, you can type in different topics, and it will tell you how interest has been gauged on those topics over time. So you might like to, for instance, start planning ahead and saying, well, that topic comes into fashion every year, obviously seasonality, things like that, and you can start working out when would be a good time for you to post that piece of content that you've written. You've also got a ton of other tools which we haven't sort of included lots of screenshots of, but things like search metrics, SEO Moz, there's tons of them, all of which have free versions available. So I wouldn't dive in and spend lots of money on tools, but you can get lots of great free information from Google. We're now going to pass over to Adam and Rachel, or actually I'll ask Adam to introduce what we're going to look at for his case study. Then I'm going to ask them a few questions, and then we'll get back to the regular presentation. So, Adam, do you want to kind of introduce what you guys are doing? I'll bring up the video.
Yeah. Hello. So we did a don't know how far to hold it. We did a project with 12 students recently, which involved us basically giving them the freedom to go out into London for 24 hours from about 4 in the morning till about 1 or 2 the next morning, and go and discover London from a student perspective. So they went out into teams and they explored London. They captured it all through photography, through their blogs, and through video. And then they kind of created some guides to London from a student perspective. So this is a little video kind of showing you what they got up to, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how we did it.
I shall play the video now, hopefully, if it works. It does.
We are at Morning Gloryville, which is an early morning rave in Shoreditch. We've been here since about 6:30 and we've just been raving. Everyone's really going for it. We've been doing yoga. It's been so much fun. It's so strange, but it's so great.
So we're at Jonestown Cafe, which is located in Bethnal Green. We were going to the Brick Lane one because the same guys own it, but we found out about this one. It's a bit off the beaten track. Bethnal Green's a bit of an understated area, so we thought we'd pop out. It's a lovely place, great coffee.
Oh, I just had a Benji cereal and chocolate chips because I'm a child.
What did you get in your cereal, Lewis?
So there's Reese's Puffs and marshmallows and chocolate cereal and chocolate milk. This place is mental.
So we just found out that Team Rare are at a rave. I think you can see how culturally enlightened we are compared to them. So
Philistine.
yeah.
Philistine.
To learn.
This is the Old Naval College at Greenwich. It's one of the UK's most important buildings. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
So we've just been up at the Sky Garden. It's been incredible. Views are completely, they're unparalleled across the city. It's free. All you need is just some advance booking. It's been great fun.
That we could have some Bond-related pie jokes. So there's Pie Fall, the Pie Who Loved Me, Golden Pie, Pie Finger, the Man with the Golden Crust.
I felt so tired when I sat down, then I ate the pie, and now I'm just on top of the world, really.
PU Students 24.
Excited to be here actually because there's loads of people here. It's really buzzy. There's loads of interesting things to look at. So yeah, we're doing good. Powering on through.
So we have just arrived at this gorgeous art gallery called Lights of Soho. After 6 o'clock, it's a members club, but before 6, anyone can come and visit and have a coffee or just chill. But yeah, it's really nice. Got some neon lights and stuff. So yeah, it's really nice.
hard, and this is like one of the most incredible things about London. There's so many hidden away like gems of London, and you'd never know this was here unless we just walked down an alleyway, and this is it. It's amazing.
Excellent. So a few questions for Adam first of all. So tell us a bit about you Students 24, is it called? How did you guys come up with the idea?
So we, Unite Students, I don't know if everybody knows who they are, but we're a student halls company basically. So traditionally the company's been all about just selling rooms to students, very bland marketing, very sales driven. And over the last couple of years we've started to try and shift it to a kind of a more kind of useful sort of softer marketing approach. And a big part of that is content marketing, because really, you know, it's not really about selling people rooms, it's about the whole experience of everything and the whole thing about being a student. So part of that is that we found that students really want to know more about their city that they're going to. So you go off to university, you've got 3 years in a new city, and something we can do as a brand is help them learn more about their city. But what we didn't want to do was tell them about the city they're moving to, you know, from a load of people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, sat in the office. You know, they want to hear it from people that are at uni now in that city. So what we did is we decided to do this kind of project where we'd allow some students to go out there and create the content themselves. But rather than just pick a load of random students, we kind of wanted to ensure the quality was up there. So we put together this project to engage bloggers who we knew would produce content of a level of quality, would capture all the things we knew people would want from it. And then, we got these guys together, and then they basically did all that stuff. So,
so presumably, based on your description of the kind of time of the challenge, one of your early criteria was students should be prepared to get up at 4 a.m, which sounds like it might have narrowed the field quite a bit to start.
Yeah, we told them that later on. We didn't tell them at the start. But,
so on that subject, then, how did you choose the bloggers you wanted to work with? What criteria did you look for, if anything?
So we did a lot of research through social media. So we started off checking Twitter and cross-referencing against.
Easy for you to say.
Against Instagram. So we were really looking for bloggers who had a high quality of content, a reasonable regularity, and people who were kind of happy to promote themselves, but in a variety of ways. So not people that were just putting posts out there. We were looking for people that can use Vine, use video clips on Twitter, use photography, and a range of mediums to kind of put their blogs out there. Because we were looking for bloggers who could kind of explain things sort of visually as well as just editorially and through tweets and things. So we used a lot of sort of social tracking tools to have a look for people who had quite a reasonable following. And we didn't want to go after sort of bloggers who had 40, 50,000 followers. We wanted to kind of go for kind of fairly sort of low-level bloggers with a few hundred to maybe 1,000 followers, people that would appreciate the opportunity to increase their kind of reach and that kind of thing, and people who had the quality but maybe were in the early days of blogging. So we did a lot of research through that. And we found some people that had a few hundred and some people that had a few thousand followers. And then we started off with a shortlist of about 50 bloggers, and we got it down to the final 12, who we then approached.
You didn't think of doing some sort of X Factor style blogger vote off then?
Yeah, it would have been fun, but we ran out of time.
So how did you go about approaching the bloggers you chose to work with then?
So we through our team, we sent out emails and we just sort of inquired to see if they'd be interested, which is probably for people like Rachel with quite a substantial following is something that happens quite regularly. So we tried to explain what we were trying to get out of the project and that we weren't instructing, we don't need them to write nice things about our company. It's not about that because no one's going to believe it. So it was more about, getting the bloggers to just get involved, have a bit of fun, and just produce some nice stuff at the same time. So we just emailed them and then gauged their response, and luckily I think everybody but one was available and keen. So
pretty good response rate.
Yeah. So we had one girl who was out of the country, but apart from that, we got pretty much our sort of first choice list.
Excellent.
Did
they all end up saying nice things about you?
They all said really nice things, but we obviously put them in the nicest building in London, otherwise we'd be fools. But it wasn't really about talking about us as a brand. It genuinely was about getting these guys who are very good at their respective areas of blogging, just to go out into London and just create some really nice content, really. I think they all really, Rachel will tell you if they had a nice time or not, but I think they had a nice time. And it really wasn't about trying to get people to buy into our brand, because that's not really the way we want to do it. We want it to be that we can just facilitate people doing what they want to do, and obviously that reflects well as a brand.
So how important is your relationship? I mean, I presume this is your first real foray into working with bloggers. Yeah. So you mentioned something earlier when we were talking backstage around, obviously, Rachel is no longer a student. As you work with bloggers, they will become non-students, not non-bloggers, hopefully. So do you plan to kind of recycle bloggers, use them again? What's your sort of, if you know, what's your plan for how you?
Yeah, we're going to recycle you. So this is our kind of first foray into proper content marketing, but because of the success of this and because of how well it's gone down internally and externally, we're working up sort of full plans to use more people, both students and non-students. Basically, just because it's more credible and it's just better quality than anything we could sit and write in the office. Well, not all of it, but so we're planning to do a lot more stuff with it next year. Definitely.
Have you had any bloggers approaching you as a result of this?
Yeah, we actually had quite a lot of people tweeting into us during the thing, saying how do I get involved and what can I do next year. So we were hoping to open up something for kind of application next year, to give people a chance to get involved in it proactively, because it's the first time we did it. We handpicked the students to ensure a level of quality, but obviously in future we'd be keen to get people to kind of apply for that kind of thing and kind of reverse the process.
And just on a kind of, I guess, a wider question, so how important or what's blogging to you? Do you read blogs regularly, or was this sort of your first exposure to the world of blogs?
No, I write a pretty poor blog myself, so I post at least once every 3 months, I'd say, except for I had like a year off. But I write about my football team, but it's generally just me ranting about how terrible everybody is at football. So I do that on the side. So I'm kind of used to the whole kind of how to promote it and the frustrations about trying to get people to retweet you for absolutely no reason.
Have you had any approaches from the teams or other brands yourself, or are you?
No. Well, I've had my stuff featured a couple of times in pretty equally rubbish football websites, but no, I'm used to the whole kind of thing. So that kind of helped me when we were sort of approaching these guys, is because I know what people are looking for, and I appreciate that those guys don't want to sell out and put a load of messages on their blogs. They're worried about their content too, so we had to think about that when we planned the project.
Excellent. So Rachel, obviously we've heard about how Unite went about approaching you. How did that compare with the standard approaches you get? Was it better, worse? Oh, crikey. Get some feedback there. So to give us a kind of summary of how they contacted you and how it went.
So the first I heard from them was about 2 months before the actual thing took place. And the initial email was really vague. It was very much, they were saying they were trying to, it was an email from an agency on behalf of Unite, and they said that they were contacting creative students.
Just use Adam's then.
Okay. They said,
they both stopped.
Should I? Oh,
there you go.
Okay. They said they were contacting creative students, and they wanted to get a team of like student influencers together. And they told us at that stage it was very much just gauging potential interest in a project that would see 12 students go to London and be basically let loose. And that apparently we would have an itinerary that would be full of fun events. And that was about all we were told. And we were just told, are you interested? And obviously I was like, well, yes, of course I'm interested. I don't really know much about it. And then it wasn't until a month later that we were told actually what the project would entail. But then I was told I was one of the 12 chosen ones, which we know, obviously it's flattering when a company approaches you and as if, makes you feel special. It makes it feel like you've been chosen, not just like contacted a load of people and you were the only one to reply or something. So yeah, it was different in that respect. And actually this was one of probably the most fun thing I've done as a result of my blog, and something that I've been offered as a blogger. And it was completely different to anything else I've done before either.
Were you required to do certain things in the run-up to the event? Did you were you tweeting about it, or was it all post-event coverage?
So we were given, in the run-up to the event, we were each given like a personalised pack, which was told us, explained everything about what the project was going to be, and that was really good as well because they tailored each one to each of us, like with our photos and our names. And what they'd done is as well they'd organised all our transport to London because we were all coming from different places in the UK, and obviously as students, the fact that they were going to cover the costs of our travel and our accommodation and everything, that was great. And so as part of this agreement, it was like, I think it varied a little bit from blogger to blogger, but it was not a requirement for me to actually do a post in the run-up to the event, but we agreed that I would have to do something. I had to write a post of 500 words afterwards and write a little thing for Unite's website and do social media updates. And it's the type of thing that I would have done without them asking me anyway. So, and obviously they asked for 500 words, but I wrote a lot more. But I did break it up. I did break it up, like you said, to make it a little bit more digestible.
So you mentioned they obviously covered your expenses and made sure you had some spending money. Would you have done this if they hadn't?
No.
Okay.
Depends how much it was going to cost me. I don't live in London. I used to study in Bristol and I'm currently in Leicestershire, and it's very flattering, it's very fun, it's always exciting to get invitations to blogger events in London, and I pretty much always want to go to them, but I can't afford to be on the train to and from London all the time. So if a company doesn't offer to pay travel expenses, then I often have to decline. If it's something I really, really, really want to go to, then I will, but usually I do have to decline, and I know that's the case for a lot of bloggers actually, but I think it was great that Unite obviously recognised that we're all students, or some of us had just graduated, and offered to do that. And the whole thing was at no cost to us whatsoever, which was great because they plied us with food as well, and that went down very well. Well, they sent us out on the first night with many beers. So
excellent. Sounds like you earned them. So it's very rare that, well, at least in my experience, that a blogger gets to meet the brand they're obviously working for. A lot of the interactions we have with brands are through emails or phone calls or whatever. So having obviously met Adam a few times now, how would you rate him or them or Unite as how they did with blogger engagement?
I hate Adam.
It's getting awkward there, so let's do it on.
No, genuinely. I think actually being with the Unite team, that they were all there with us, made a really big difference to how we all felt towards Unite, because they were actually loads of fun. It was really good, actually. And that did make a difference, putting a name to a face to a name. And I think that definitely added to the whole experience, because all the students got on, all the Unite people were really friendly to us and really got involved in the project. And it was actually, we were all really sad when the 3 days ended, and it was like, oh, bye. And of course it had only been 3 days, but we'd had so much fun. So yeah, it was a great experience in that sense as well, with making that link with Unite.
And final question before we go back to the presentation. Having had a good experience with a brand, obviously you said it was one of the most fun experiences you've had. Has it raised the bar for what you would expect in future from brands, or are you still kind of open to all other types of offers as well?
It's an interesting question. I think without even really thinking about it, I think subconsciously it has raised the bar. And I think I am now more conscious of what I accept and what I don't accept, and it's tricky because sometimes everything you're offered you feel like you ought to do, but I'm learning that that's really not the case. And I'm also noticing, I'm sort of learning that there are so many creative and interesting things that brands can do, and a lot of the time they're not. and you don't always have to just go along to something if it doesn't really interest you and it's not really the type of thing that would benefit you and your blog. But yeah, I'm not saying everything that people do has to be like a massive 3 or 4 day stay in London and trip and everything. But I think it's made me appreciate more when brands are a bit more creative and also take the time to appreciate you and do things targeted to you and personalized, and makes it seem like, you know, you're a really valued individual, not like the insert blog name here type of thing. So yeah.
Excellent. Right, so as I say, we've got some Q&A at the end. So if you've got any questions for Adam and Rachel, if you can just save them for another sort of 20 minutes while we go through the rest of this, we'll take all Q&A at the same time. But in the meantime, can you give Adam and Rachel a round of applause? Thank them. We've told them that because of the chairs they're sitting on, we're expecting a Westlife style sort of dismount at some point where they're going to do the dance. So watch out for that as a treat in the second half. Anyway, back to it. So obviously we talked a little bit there about how perhaps Rachel appreciates the value she offers to brands a little bit more now that she's obviously been treated quite nicely by a brand. So we're going to talk about that in this section. So kind of 3 different strands of helping you get noticed, which I think is probably one of the the valuable things we can pass to you as bloggers, as an agency who works with bloggers. So first up, getting yourself noticed by the public. Aside from the obvious take-home here, which is create great content and lots of people will read your content, there are lots of other ways you can help people to find you. So I'll go through some of those now. So SEO basics. I'm sure if all of you are blogging, you'll probably have done a cursory search on SEO. You might have SEO plugins on your site that help you to change the titles or adjust your metadata, things like that. But I'll run you through a few of the SEO basics that you could look at and will help ultimately your site get found. So I'm going to try not to waffle too much about these because I can talk about this for weeks. So links is a key one. From Google's point of view, links are a very big ranking factor in how they decide which sites to rank. So if you can figure out ways of getting yourself links to your blog, it is a helpful metric for Google to find. Again, as I say, any of these that I don't cover in enough detail, feel free to write questions down and ask at the end because I can waffle about this all day. Organic rankings, obviously, how you get found in Google these days is down to the various different presentations Google give, whether it be through traditional Google search or Google News or Google Trends or all the various places that people can find you. Ultimately, that is the number one place where SEO is going to have its play. Clear navigation helps not only for your users to help find their way through your blog, it also helps Google. So, for instance, a nice example of that is called pagination. I'm going to geek out on you slightly here. Pagination essentially means whether you've split your blog index into pages or not. So essentially, if you go down through your blog and you get to post 10, and then it says next page, and then you go to the next 10, and it says next page, Google don't like that. Well, don't like that per se, but they need a way of, for instance, getting down to a post that you posted 2.5 years ago, which may still contain some useful value, without having to simply scroll through all your pages. I'm hoping that's probably a bit of a no-brainer these days because you don't see it as much, but things like archives help that, things like quick links to deep pages on your site. Ultimately, you've got to make it as easy as possible for Google to find all your content. So don't make them do work by having to scroll through lots of pages or click 50 links to get to something. A mature domain, that doesn't mean naughty mature. That essentially means the age of your domain helps. So Google like to see that you've had a domain for a while, simply because it ensures they aren't sort of presenting search results to people that have been there for 10 minutes and fly-by-night domains. So I'd encourage you to get yourself a domain nice and early. Don't sort of sit there and say, well, I'll blog for a couple of years and then I'll decide on the domain later. The sooner you can get a nice domain name going, the sooner that can start accruing SEO value. To skip forward slightly to the self-hosting part, if you do self-host as opposed to using, for instance, .blogspot or a .wordpress or whatever, that again helps you from Google's point of view because they see you as a unique site. So you've got the benefit of being able to accrue SEO benefits to your actual domain rather than just contributing to a Blogspot or a WordPress or a Blogger or whatever it is. So get yourself a domain sorted nice and early. Internal linking, as I mentioned, if you're writing a post about something you've referred to in a previous post, link to it. Again, it helps users as well. If they see something and you say, hey, I talked about this in the previous post, it also helps Google because it means you've got lots of links going around your site which are helping the crawlers or the robots or whatever nerdy name you want to give Google to find all your content very easily. Meta descriptions are kind of one of the SEO basics. So that is the snippet of text that you see. If you do a Google search and you find 10 sites, obviously you've got the what we call the 10 blue links at the top. You've got a little description underneath each one. Sometimes that description comes from the snippet of copy on your page, which Google has deemed to be the most appropriate. Sometimes Google grab it from what's called your meta description tag. So if you can edit that and obviously customize it for the post itself, or make sure you've got nice, well-written descriptions, it will not only help Google to know what you're talking about, it also helps the user when they see that site in the results to click through. So I'd encourage you to know what your meta descriptions are. Site speed is kind of small, but actually still important. So Google do appreciate if you've got a site which loads properly and quickly. So if you're on a cruddy old server that loads your site up in 5 minutes, maybe think about investing in some better hosting, because that will help your Google rankings. And mobile friendliness, I mentioned earlier. One of Google's most recent updates was nicknamed Mobile Geddon. I don't know who names these things, but ultimately it was down to the fact that Google are now favouring sites that are mobile friendly, which makes sense, as I say, because probably pretty much 50% of all your traffic is probably now coming from mobile and tablets, so it makes sense to cater to those people. A little bit about the layout. I mentioned earlier, having an archive is useful not just for your users themselves, but obviously for Google, to make sure they've got an easy way to find your old content. Visible social profiles, again, we mentioned that from a perspective of nice user friendliness, but also it helps Google too, so they can link you together with your public social personas. So if you want, in an ideal world, someone to type your blog name into Google and to find your blog, you'd also probably like them to find your Twitter, maybe your Facebook, maybe your Blogspot, or whatever other sort of social domains you have. Helping to, or essentially linking to those from your blog, helps to cement the kind of association between those two things. So when Google are looking at a page going, is that the Twitter channel for this blog, or is that something else? Having a link between the two is an obvious, easy way for Google to know that those are associated. Making it user-friendly, ultimately, that's a very all-encompassing term, but ultimately, if you make your blog easy for users to read, it is probably easy for Google to read too. So don't make things complicated. Don't do strange fonts that you can't read. Don't do grey writing on a black background. All that sort of nonsense. The old SEO adage is, if you think of Google as the ultimate, this sounds quite bad taste, but a disabled user essentially. So you've got things like W3C, which is the World Wide Web Consortium, who talk about usability and making sure you are able to be read by screen readers and all sorts of other sort of access tools that people with limited sight or limited visibility, or all those kind of things can have. You will also make your site very friendly for Google, because Google ultimately doesn't care if you've got pretty pictures, they don't care if you've got a lovely font, they just care about the content you've got, the links you've got, the structure you have, so they kind of, they see your page in a very flat way. Contact page, again, not only to associate yourself with the social profiles, but also to make it easy for people to contact you, if that's what you want. If you're obviously choosing to blog anonymously, that may be an appealing thing for you, but if you would like brands to contact you, tell them how to do it easily. It should be a no-brainer, but I have seen a lot of people who don't do it. Self-hosting I sort of referred to earlier, so I'll skip past that. Social basics. So these are kind of the most popular social channels, and I'm sure most of you know this already. But having a profile on the appropriate ones simply enables people to find you and interact with you in all the different places. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Google+, and Blog Loving. Blog Loving wasn't actually familiar to me until I got into blogging, and when I realised what a hub community it actually is. But all of those are well respected, and they will all help your visibility for getting noticed by the public. Networking is also a great way to get discovered, both in a traditional sense of events like today, when I'm sure you can all have the opportunity to chat to each other after we've finished blathering on, but also online. So Facebook groups can be great. I mentioned earlier I'm a dad blogger. I'm part of a Facebook group full of other dad bloggers. I think it's about 1,200 of us now, which is not just great from a point of view of getting to know fellow dad bloggers and getting inspiration and seeing what they're posting about. It's also a great way for us to share opportunities. So quite often someone will come on and say, hey, I've been approached by Audi who want people to review cars, and they've asked me to recommend other bloggers, who's up for it. Generally speaking, if you've got a good community of like-minded people, they can be a great way of actually getting your blog noticed. So it's not just about saying, hey, I've got a blog, come and read it, because if all these other people are bloggers as well, they're all going to be wanting the same thing. So it's about what are the benefits you can get out of it. Forums, again, classic old school SEO and old school networking, but forums still can be a great way to get to know people. Twitter chats, and the dreaded Twitter parties. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Twitter parties. I've only become familiar with them myself recently, and I hate them. But apparently they're a very popular way for people to interact with their followers. I'd say use them cautiously, because as someone who follows a lot of blogs myself, as soon as they have a Twitter party, I'm switching off and usually putting them on mute. But yeah, they can be a good way for you to network. Engagement with other bloggers obviously is a key one. As I say, don't just use it as an opportunity to say, hey, you read my content and I'll read yours. Use it as inspiration. What's doing well for them? What are they getting engagement on? What are they having success with? Who are they working with? What brands have they worked with that maybe you can approach, or that you can ask them to get in contact with you? And PRs or agencies or brands or whatever form they come in, but they can obviously approach you. You can approach them. If you work with them and you work with them well, don't be afraid to go back to them again and say, hey, I'd love to do more work in future, because half the time they won't think to do that, but they'll actually think, hey, actually you were a really great person to work with. We'd love to do it. But frankly, you don't ask, you don't get. So there's no harm in approaching them yourself and asking if you want to work again. And guest posting. Guest posting as a term is a contentious one, but I don't mean this from a link point of view, and I certainly don't mean this as in saying you should accept lots of guest posts on your blog, because lots of nefarious SEO people will use that as an excuse to get a nice SEO link out of your blog by saying, hey, I've got a great post that would be perfect for your audience. Please post it on your site. You don't even have to pay me. I'll just give you the post for free. You get approaches like that. It's 99% because of SEO. So you need to either push back and say no, or you need to say, no, I don't do that things unless I'm paid for it. I don't mean that sense of guest posting. I mean actually networking with other bloggers. If you can get guest posting spots on other sites, it can be a great way of getting your own visibility up, even if it seems like a counterintuitive measure to send people to another blog rather than your own. Obviously they can generate great traffic for you. Lots and lots of sites that will do that sort of thing. Huffington Post is a great example. I know for lots of bloggers they have kind of guest posting spots on Huffington Post that drive huge amounts of engagement for them. Works for some people, doesn't work for others. Creating buzz is an obvious one. Obviously promoting yourself, trying to generate a bit of feedback from your fans or your followers, or whatever you want to call them. And SEO gain is also a big thing of guest posting, because obviously if they allow you to put a post on Huffington Post and it includes a link back to your blog, that's obviously a good thing from Google's point of view. So there's lots of kind of benefits to going out there and putting content on other people's sites as well as just your own, even though, as I say, it seems a bit counterintuitive. So getting noticed by agencies and brands. So that's kind of what a lot of us want to do, to make sure we're getting seen by those people who have the big advertising budgets, or the free stuff, or the free things to review, and all those good things. So what are agencies looking for? How are they measuring you as a blogger? We'd all like to hope that they're measuring you because they've read your blog, as they probably tell us in all those emails they send you, and they're a big fan and they completely are in love with everything you post. Most of it's probably bullshit, quite frankly. They are looking at you from a number of different ways. So first of all, metrics specific to the projects that they're actually working on. So most of these people that approach you from brands or agencies will have a particular campaign, or they have a particular budget they're working to, and they will make sure, first of all, that your blog fits with what their goals are. So I know Adam mentioned about how he didn't necessarily approach the top tier bloggers, and I know that's something that a lot of agencies nowadays are doing as a way to kind of avoid having to spend 10 grand on getting a Zoella who probably doesn't get out of bed for less than a flight to Dubai. Brands are increasingly seeing the value of the bloggers who are coming up, so to speak, not only because they're obviously the people who are keen to work with brands, because maybe they haven't been bombarded by 100 different brands at the same time, but also because if they work well with you now, when you're kind of starting your blogging journey, the likelihood is that you will have a nice affinity for them and you will be encouraged to work with them in future. Something that I see myself, one of the first brands that contacted my blog was Mattel, who obviously do Hot Wheels and Nerf guns, maybe not Nerf guns. They do a bunch of toys anyway. And because they're one of the first brands that work with me, I will happily now promote whatever they like, frankly. I hope they're not watching this or see this tweeted. But, I'm much more likely to work for them when they've been nice to me in the past than I am from another toy company who approached me cold and have never worked with me before. So you have to remember that you have that value to agencies and brands as well. The SEO value, as I mentioned earlier on when I talked about the SEO, your sites do have an intrinsic SEO value. The more popular your site is, generally speaking, the better. So when they're approaching you and they say, hey, by the way, this post must include a link, that's usually a clue to the fact that they're probably doing this project as part of SEO, so gaining their clients or their own websites some SEO value. I would encourage you, however you choose to kind of monetize your blog, whether you are opting to pay for these things, sorry, not pay, be paid for these things, or whether you do it purely as a sort of a generous generous out of your own heart. Make sure you know that you have an SEO value, because frankly there are a lot of brands and companies out there who will try and get that out of you. So you might as well at least know what you're giving them for free. So things like, the domain age, as I mentioned before, referring domains and links, all those things help to add SEO value to your site, which in turn they will gain if you provide them content and links. So be aware and don't be afraid to push back on the brand/agency and say, I'd like to know more about why you're doing this. Is it engagement or is it SEO or whatever? Your reach is obviously a key thing that brands will look for. Again, something that Adam mentioned. So the number of people that visit your blog, the sort of traffic you're getting, the sort of traffic you might be likely to get them if you post about them, and an authority within a niche. Niche? Oh God, I've been around too many Americans. Your niche. Because you don't have to necessarily be those, Zoellas or the kind of the top flight bloggers, because within a certain vertical, you may still be a very influential person. So, on the rankings of parent bloggers, I'm probably in the 50,000 league. On the rankings of UK dad bloggers, I'm supposedly within the top 10. I'm not quite sure how they measure that, but apparently I am. So you have to remember you fit within certain verticals as well as fitting in the blogger space in general. And then your social reach as well. So you have social followers, hopefully. Tools like Clout are great ones for agencies or brands to use to figure out how socially engaged you are. If you've not used Clout before, or other kind of reach tools, I'd encourage you to research them. And engagement and comments is another one. So if you're posting a lot of blog posts that get a lot of engagement and comments from your users, that is a sign to a brand or agency that you clearly have a well-enthused fan base who, again, are likely to respond to any sort of sponsored or co-valued posts that you do with them. So there's a lot of benefit that you as a blogger provide to brands, and kind of the more you know about that, the better you are to decide how you choose to work with those brands and agencies. Because speaking as an agency person myself, we would love you all to do work for our brands for free. We're not all running charities. If we've got an advertising budget for a brand and we can get 500 bloggers to cover it for free, we're not going to say no to that. But at the same time, we know you have a value. So if you push back and say, I'm sorry, I'm not doing this for free, or I'm not doing this without seeing the product, that's fair game. So know your value, and then you'll be able to sort of know your reach better.
Henry, can I just jump in for a second?
Go ahead.
I think the engagement on the engagement thing is probably one of the biggest things that we looked at, because so my day job is in SEO and also in paid media, so things like click-through rates for paid media and PPC and all that kind of stuff. So for me, it was less about how many followers people had and more about the engagement rate on people's posts. So typically, obviously, we'd be looking at something like 0.01% engagement. So, if you had thousands of followers, you'd be getting, a handful of engagements on a post. So I was really looking for people who were kind of nearer to sort of 0.1 to 1% engagement on posts, i.e. people that had maybe less followers overall, but people that actually were kind of in touch with their audience and, were getting some kind of response, because as a brand, that's a much more useful metric than, because I think the days of talking about impressions and things are pretty much gone now. Anybody that has any awareness of digital marketing now knows that impressions are fairly meaningless, and actually it's about engagement and as a result, visits. So I think that's really important from a brand perspective.
Very much. And also, one of the aspects that you can't fake, or it's very hard to fake. We all know you can buy Twitter followers, you can buy Instagram followers, you can, there's all sorts of ways to increase your social reach. But engagement is something that's much harder to fake. So it certainly is something that a brand will find appealing from that point of view. So how building your reputation? So you might have done a bit of work with some agencies or brands. How can you ensure you get more of that? Obviously, the first and most obvious one is the quality of your work. So if you're producing nice sponsored content, you can bet that if you've posted some sponsored or branded or review content, an agency or brand that want to work with you will probably go to that first and see what you've done, because they don't want to start working with a blogger who slags the product off, or who writes awful reviews, or who smashed the product up to see whether it's survived. I know a couple of bloggers who do that weirdly. So they will be looking at the quality of your previous work. So make sure that, for instance, especially the first few times you work with brands, you put a bit of extra effort in, as I'm sure Rachel will attest to. Respond and deliver on time. That's not to say that you are a slave to the brand or to the agency. But ultimately, if they're working to a particular time frame and you can deliver on that time, they will be more likely to work with you in future. It should be common sense, but frankly, they're doing a job, you're doing a job. If you're all honest with each other about what you're trying to achieve, usually they'll be pretty open about, what time frames they need to work to, or what they're looking to deliver, or all that kind of stuff. Threats and PR shaming. I was loath to put this in, but there was a very recent example. Did you all read about the hashtag blogger blackmail with the cake shop in Brighton, I think it was, and the blogger who was asked to review the cake shop, and she went there and she asked for a massive box of pretty much every product they had, and then there was a big ugly PR shaming thing online where she was slagging the brand off and the brand was slagging her off, and it all looked pretty ugly for pretty much everyone involved. But frankly, something she could have avoided right at the start by, when she was contacted by them, clarifying what they were expecting from her, and either then saying, sorry, I'm not going to do it, or yes, I will, but I'll charge you, or I'll expense it, or whatever. So you might as well get these things out and open very early on, and you'll avoid any kind of ugly PR or agency shaming. But obviously, what you guys choose to do is entirely up to you. And then direct client contact. So again, having contact with the brand who has chosen to work with you is a great thing. And as Rachel has proven, increases your likelihood of working with them again, keeps you front of mind when they're working with you. If you had a great experience with them, tell them, give them feedback if they weren't doing well enough. Again, we get feedback from bloggers all the time when they say, actually, if you do this, we would do X, Y, and Z. So it helps us because it ultimately helps us to learn and to grow as brands. And then finally, a bit about monetizing your blog. So if you're looking for other ways to kind of make your blog pay the bills, or at least pay for itself, perhaps, there are plenty of ways that you can do this. So sponsored posts is one we've been talking about a little bit about. Obviously, accepting other people's content and charging them for it. Reviews, you might choose to say, look, I won't be paid for posts or for sponsorships, but I at least want the product and I want to keep it, or I want to have use of it for a while. Frankly, the brands themselves usually have very big budgets for freebies, and if you ask to keep it, they'll probably say yes. Well, there's a few exceptions, but generally speaking, it doesn't cost much for them because they have large marketing budgets that cover them. Affiliate schemes. If you've got a lot of traffic and you're getting a lot of engagement, then an affiliate scheme might be something to consider. For those not aware of what an affiliate scheme is, basically it's advertisers who would pay to essentially have traffic from your website go to theirs, and they will pay you for every click. So rather than a traditional sort of advertising program where you're maybe putting banner ads up or text links, an affiliate scheme, essentially they're paying you for sales they get, which is great if you can actually generate those sales. Then you can make a bit of money from each one of them. Social promotions, again, lots of brands will want to work with you for your Twitter followers or for your Facebook followers. So it's not just maybe about posts themselves or the power of your blog. Lots of them want you to tweet about them and say all sorts of nice things about them. Excuse me. Banners and ads, the kind of most traditional way of monetizing websites, but they're still very prevalent. And most blog platforms will allow you to make it very easy for you to host banners and ads and things like that. Videos increasingly becoming a monetizable thing. YouTube proves that very much. If you've got popular video content, YouTube will pay you for the people that watch it ultimately. So if you've got a very photogenic face, unlike myself, then perhaps you should try videos as a way to monetize. Courses and workshops. If you're blogging on a particular subject which you are becoming an authority on, don't be afraid to offer to teach other people about that subject, because people will, if they're reading your blog and they like what you're talking about, they probably will pay you to teach them how to do it themselves. And ebooks, again, if you've got great content that you think, this would look great in book form or in more traditional published form, don't be afraid to give it a try. I know several dad bloggers that have got successful books out there. I also know several dad bloggers that have got very unsuccessful books out there. But frankly, if you don't give it a try, you won't know what the power of your content is. So all these things are things you should probably give a bit of a punt to. And finally, we'll end up with a bit of a Q&A. I hope I've not borne any of you to tears so far, but an opportunity for you guys to ask any questions you've got for both the panel or for us or for each other if you want. But crack on. Anyone got a question? I will start you off. I'll warm you up with a few questions. For Rachel, good news, Rachel. I've got more questions for you to see if I can inspire anyone. So how long was it after you started blogging before you got approached by your first brand organisation?
Well, this is interesting, actually, because it ties into what you were saying earlier. I've had my blog for about 5.5 years now, so quite a long time. But it wasn't, I had it for at least 2 years before I put any contact details on my blog. And pretty much as soon as I added a contact page and an email address, I started getting approached by companies. So if you don't already do that, then I would suggest doing it if you do want to be approached and if you want to collaborate with brands.
So a quick question for the audience, perhaps. So collaboration, so ways of brands working with you. How many of you, I'm assuming most of you are bloggers, how many of you will work with brands? Okay, counter question. How many of you will refuse to work with brands? And okay, a couple of hands. What's your reasoning behind not working with brands? Independence. So you feel that working with a brand would kind of... Okay, interesting. And you the same? So maybe you haven't been approached so far, but perhaps if they came to you with the right offering, then you would be open to it.
Yeah, well, I'm contacted, but if it doesn't fit the brand, then I just wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't put money, it doesn't matter, it doesn't suit.
So that leads to another question. How many of you, if you were approached by a brand that wasn't relevant perhaps to your blog, but they were willing to pay you or give you something free, how many of you would still consider covering that brand? Okay. So you would see the impetus on you to actually kind of somehow crowbar it in.
For a tire company, which actually ended up being tied in with a road trip I happened to take the week before, and it was just about the road trip and my first car, which my blog's generally about London, but I have a lot of personal posts in there, so it was more of a reminiscing memory type thing, which it's not something I would have probably posted if they hadn't contacted me, but I feel still I made it fit.
Yeah. Okay, good answer. So Rachel, tell us about blog-life balance. So you're not a full-time blogger, are you? You're obviously an ex-student who's now flourishing career.
Yeah. So I just graduated from university this summer we've just had, and blog-life balance is a challenge, which I imagine a lot of you can relate to. It was particularly tricky during my final year of university, during my finals. I could very happily and very easily work full-time on my blog. I feel like I always have tons of ideas of not only posts I want to write, but also ways I want to improve my blog, like with design or monetizing it and things like that. And I think it can be really hard when you've got all these things you want to do, but like it's not your job, it's not your career. So I think finding the balance is hard. And then once you do start to feel, you get really into it and you get really passionate about it, and then that can become a bit of a pressure to keep posting and to keep your posts coming up. And then you don't want to feel like you're disappointing followers, or you're going to lose followers if you don't post for a week when you have been publishing, every couple of days. And what I'm learning is that generally people are really understanding. People don't mind if you don't post for a week or something. They're not actually going to just desert you and be like, oh, she didn't post, we're going to stop reading her. So I think that's quite an important thing to remember when trying to keep a healthy blog life balance. And I know a lot of bloggers feel this way as well. If it were to become like a full-time job and I had to, make a living from blogging alone, then I think the risk is that you start to resent your blog, and then it becomes like too much of a burden, and it has to be something that pays your bills, which I think the passion comes across well when it's just your hobby and it's just something you love doing. But then again, of course, there are so many really successful full-time bloggers, so I guess it depends.
So a question for the audience, how many of you, or if any, are full-time bloggers? As I suspected. How many of you, as Rachel mentioned, if you were able to make your blog into a full-time career, how many of you would want to? Excellent. So I guess a good question, feel free to shout out answers. Have any of the things we've talked about today struck a chord with you in terms of ways you can help to get there, or are there other things that you need to solve, or what frustrations do you have as a blogger that would like to go full-time in how you'd like to get there?
I think my main thing is being from freebies. Freebies are nice, but how can you ask for money? So that's the frustration. Like, yeah, it's great freaking free, but how do I get paid?
Do you ask for it?
And I think you'll give me something for free. So is that rude if I ask you on top of the freeness?
Yeah.
It's not for free, it's payment for
Yeah.
time.
There's two things to consider about. First of all, if the brand is giving you their product, the margin on that product is quite high, so the cost to them is probably limited, because the chances are they've got tons of this stuff to give away. Ultimately, most brands that work with us on campaigns where we're working with bloggers will say, we've got X amount of collateral we can send out for people to review. Don't go thinking that's a big cost to them. Second piece of advice I give you is you don't ask, you don't get. And I've had times myself where I've thought, I don't really think this is relevant, or it's, I can't be asked to do it. I get a lot of that because I'm lazy. But I'll push back and sort of almost use it as an excuse to say, I'll get them to go away by saying, I'm sorry, I charge money for that. And they'll often come back and say, oh, well, that's fine, I've got budget for it. How much will you charge for it? And it wasn't until I realised that. Say again?
How do you know your value?
I keep on asking for more until they stop giving it to me. Yeah. I think, aside from knowing, because I work in marketing, so I kind of know what I would pay a blogger for it, as I say, I just kept on asking for more and more until you kind of plateau and you can't get anything. But even then you get bloggers, or you get brands who surprise you, because I'll do stuff for review purposes. I'll do that happily, especially if it's a product I like, and so long as they let me keep it. I can't stand sending a product back afterwards. It really pisses me off. Excuse my French. But I will also know that I have a value to them, especially if things like, if they ask for a link in there for a start, I know that they're doing that from not just a review point of view. I will push back and ask them. I.e., generally speaking, I don't know, 100 quid, 200 quid, something like that. But occasionally you'll get a brand who say, we've got a budget of £1,000 for this, can you work with that? And you say, okay, I can work with £1,000. So it's probably just trial and error, frankly. There's going to be some people who are cheapskates and they're going to say, I've only got £10 for this. And you say, sorry, I'm not happy with working with it. And there are some people who've got much bigger budgets. But, sort of behind the curtain secret from the agency side, we mostly have budgets for these things. And if you're going to volunteer to do it for free, we're not going to say, no, don't do it for free. We'll give you some money for it. So ask, frankly. And that's probably the way that they're going to actually figure out.
I think an interesting perspective from, although we're a big company financially, we're not a massive brand. We had a real problem with the issue of paying people. So this probably isn't a big problem for big multinational, well-known brands who have this stuff going on all the time. But we had a problem where we couldn't really pay the students cash. It was very frowned upon from sort of finance perspective and from a tax perspective. So it was a lot easier for us to expense the whole project for the bloggers and kind of give them as much stuff as we could in terms of provide them with food, give them a few treats. Take them around and see nice places. That's a lot easier for us to kind of expense as a business, and it's pretty boring stuff. But my sort of take out for you guys would be that it's very easy to get stuff off brands. It might be harder to get cash unless they're quite a big business. So if they're offering you experiences, travel, stuff like we said, that stuff they offer as a product, just take as much as you can get, because frankly they've probably got tons of it. But if it comes to sort of monetary payment, that becomes a slightly more sort of problematic issue in some companies, not necessarily everyone, but that probably depends on the scale of the company you've been approached by, I would say.
It will also depend entirely on what they're looking for you to do, because obviously some people have an opinion about, if they're looking for an unbiased review from you, then technically paying for it, I know from a blogger perspective, makes me think, I'd better write a nice review now because they've paid me, or they might not pay me if I don't write a good review. But then, obviously, you guys were looking for a network of people, you're looking for engagement. There was lots of things that you were kind of your decisions behind this, whereas perhaps brands that are doing it from a more traffic perspective or SEO perspective, they probably have budgets to work with. I think what Adam's basically saying is he doesn't want lots of bloggers trying to charge him money. He likes getting them for free.
Yeah, the rooms doesn't cost me a lot of money. So
exactly. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I would encourage you, frankly, a brand's not going to turn around and say, I can't believe you asked me for money, I'm never going to talk to you again. The worst they could say is no. Carry on.
I just had a question for Rachel. I feel really weird with that. Okay, hi. Often these days it seems like the very successful bloggers have a very specific niche. So like Deliciously Ella, for example, has a very, very specific niche. Your blog is a lot more broad. It's travel, it's food, it's handbags, it's all kinds of things. So did you start off with a specific niche and then diversify, or did you start with that diversification, and what do you find the most useful?
It's interesting because when I first started my blog ages ago, I thought it was going to be a style blog. I thought it was going to be a fashion blog. I thought that was what I was most interested in. And it was only when I actually started doing it and doing it more, I realized that wasn't what I wanted to write about, and I probably wasn't as fashionable as I thought. And so I think people always say, I always read, advice for bloggers saying, find your niche, be really specific, make your blog just about one thing. And I've always just thought, no. I want to write about loads of different things because there are loads of different things I'm interested in. And personally, when I read other blogs, I like them to be varied. I like blogs where one day it's a travel post, the next day it's about food. I'm seeing some people nodding. Do people agree with me? Yes? Some? Yes. Okay, good. I think that, I think the most important thing is to just write about what you want to write about. Write it in your own voice. Don't try and copy other bloggers, because I think that can be quite obvious, especially if we all read, a lot of the big bloggers, and then you see a lot of smaller bloggers that I think it can be quite obvious that they're obviously take inspiration from other bloggers, but don't copy them 100%. And I think it's really important to stay true to yourself. That sounds really cringy, but to write exactly about what you want to write about, because the passion will come across. And don't try and write about things you're not actually interested in, and don't try and put on a voice that's not your voice. My friends always tell me that when they're reading my blog, they hear me in their head, because I write just how I speak, and that works for me. And you just have to, I think, find your own style. That went off on a tangent. Sorry.
If I could offer a slight counter-argument to that, from a purely agency and brand point of view, if you are looking to work with a lot of brands, it helps the brand to be able to know what you are, because you're most likely going to be categorized into some sort of box. They're going to say, oh, it's a lifestyle blogger, oh, it's a fashion blogger, or a health blogger, or a finance blogger. Chances are they're looking for those things, and they're probably going to collect a big database or collection or network of bloggers. And if you can at least have something you perhaps lean towards on a regular basis, it makes it slightly easier for them, because they're going to go, I know that if I post something about my finance brand on this blog, chances are they're probably going to keep posting content which will help it to remain relevant. So I think I would definitely meet you halfway and say, from a reader perspective, it's definitely, write about whatever you like, but bear in mind that brands are probably going to be categorizing you in one way or the other. So if that is your number one aim for blogging, bear that in mind.
I think that's very interesting actually as well, because I do completely see that. And often if I'm contacting a company, if it's something that I want to collaborate with, say it's a hotel company or something, I will introduce myself as a travel and lifestyle blogger. Or if it's a food company, I'll be like, I'm a food and lifestyle blogger, and sort of label myself however I want to be. But I've often thought actually that there is that aspect of when you want to be seen to attractive to a brand. So I think, yeah, it's definitely true.
I think another interesting kind of point for that is that it used to be very much that well, I know from my own point of view, but also from a sort of client point of view, blog readers or traffic would come from people subscribing to your blog, or having a mailing list, or being a dedicated fan of your blog, whereas now much more of your traffic will come from social channels, or from an interesting tweet that goes viral, or people retweeting something. And at that point, it becomes less important what you are about, because ultimately people will pick and choose what they want to read based on whether it sounds interesting in 140 characters or whether they've seen it shared. So increasingly knowing where your traffic comes from will help to guide you into how you should look to get more traffic ultimately. Because one of the things I always rant about, and I've avoided it too much today, is Google and how they maybe dictate to bloggers what they should and shouldn't do. I mentioned at the start, I'm in a dad blogger group of about 1,000 dad bloggers, and barely a week goes by when someone new doesn't come on and say, oh, I've heard about paying for links, but I've heard Google will arrest you and they will send your blog to blog hell if you do this. Is that right? And then someone else come and say, nah, they won't. And a big debate will happen. But Google generally have kind of built themselves a reputation as the police of the internet. And they say, don't do this, it's bad. Don't do this, it's bad. You can do these things. My blog, I get hardly any traffic from Google anyway. I get most of mine from social channels. So do I care what Google say? Not so much. If all your traffic does come from Google, perhaps that should be a higher priority for you, because knowing where these people are coming from will, as I say, help you to attract more of them, hopefully. Sorry, I'm waffling again. Any other questions?
Just off the back of the last few points,
Yeah.
in regards to
familiar with it, obviously.
And your opinion or your sense of style is not of that, of what is trendy, if you like. So, yes, you want to write about what you're passionate about, what you're into, what kind of is definitive to your own style, but how do you get the masses to want to read about that? Because everything else, like you said with the analytics, like trend driven, everyone's going to read about those kind of posts or those kind of bloggers. How do you get someone to say, hey, let's try someone new, who's not kind of going with the wave of...
I think if you're talking purely audience, so not kind of brands or marketing, then social channels are your best bet. Because I think very rarely as a blog reader do I Google, I'm wondering what people are thinking about this, whereas I would happily go on Twitter or Facebook and search for something because I know it'll be probably a lot more up to the minute. So I think social channels are your opportunity to stand out. They are also your better opportunity for reaching a much wider audience if you do happen to catch someone's eye, or if you do happen to blog about something that no one else is talking about. I guess I would also say don't be afraid to ask, in terms of saying to people, if you like this post, please share it, or if you've got a comment. It seems to be a sort of classic thing nowadays, but it does work. If you write at the end of your post, I'd love to hear what you think, you catch them at the end of their post and they go, oh, I do have an opinion about that. Whereas you don't say that, people won't bother. So don't be afraid to ask people to help you. And ultimately, if you've got an engaged fan base already, the chances are they will probably be happy to spread you out to other people, because everyone wants to be the first person to know something cool and say, oh, I've seen this amazing blog. So I'd ask, frankly, and I'd encourage people to share. And I wouldn't, especially when you're growing your blog, I wouldn't try and generate SEO traffic and start saying, right, what are people searching for about today? What's the latest trending topic? I'll quickly toss out a post on your ox blood coat, or whatever it was. I've forgotten. It's so trendy. But I wouldn't. As Rachel says, try and be authentic and try and create good content. And ultimately, if you do that and you get people to see it, you should, touch wood, grow organically and grow naturally. That being said, we all want more traffic to our blogs, and it's probably something that most people, if they strike that formula and figure it out, will probably keep for themselves, because it's the magic formula. I don't know if you guys have got an opinion on the question as well, or.
I agree.
You know the secrets, and you're not going to tell everyone, aren't you?
No, I disagree with what you said.
I think the only thing I would add, not from a brand perspective, but from my own experience from blogging, would be timeliness. Because if you can write something ahead of something happening and then edit it in real time and post it immediately after something, obviously, like for me, that's when I've got the biggest traction off anything. Has been. So, for example, like when I wrote about football and sports and things, it would be writing as much as I could before the event, probably how they do journalistically in terms of doing all the padding, and then all the stuff that's dependent on a live event. So, for example, if it was fashion, completely out of my depth here, I'm going to guess if something was unveiled, maybe, I don't know. If you write all the background stuff and do all the photography and get it all set up, and then anything about the unveiling you can add at the last minute, get it in, get it live, and get it posted, and be one of the first people commenting on something. I think for me, that's when I've had the best traction, is being one of the first people to respond to something and tweeting it at an influencer or somebody with a big following who can then kind of share it out there.
Also, I'd add something before you go. Also, don't be afraid to repost that content. So I posted a post on my blog about the appeals process of getting a child into school, because we went through the process, and actually it's something that before we did it, I Googled how the process works, because the authorities don't make it easy, so I read other bloggers. So I thought, I'll write a post on this process. And that post sees a little bit of a boost in ranking every time the appeals period happens. So don't be afraid. If you think, actually, this is relevant again now, tweet it out, post it, and say, hey, I wrote a post about this, it's relevant. Don't just do, I know a lot of people do the whole 4 tweets a day because they say, I've got to catch everyone on Twitter at different times, and the tweet only has a certain lifespan. It could be months, could be years. If you think you've got a relevant piece of content to something that is happening right now and you can catch that trend, then do it.
Just today, actually, like 2.5 years ago, I wrote a blog post about why I love being a Bristol uni student. And I just was even looking at this before we came, because today, University of Bristol and Bristol Students' Union and Bristol as a city and all these different accounts shared it, because it's back to uni time. And the blog views for that post have just gone shoop, literally just because first Bristol University decided to share it, and they shared it on their Twitter and their Facebook, and then it got all these other shares. And it's not a new post. I was looking at it and I was like, the pictures in this are really bad, because I did it was years ago. But yeah, that's another example of that anyway.
We have time for one more question. I believe there was a gentleman at the back who had his hand up. May have changed his mind. One of you guys? Yeah, go on.
I just wanted to ask, how important do you think it is to have a face to your blog? So being personable with your actual brand.
So are you asking me as a marketer or as a reader?
Can I dive in?
Yeah, go ahead.
This was actually something that I noticed for the first year or two when I was writing my blog. I had like 0 pictures of me. I was nervous. I was quite young. I was like, oh, do I want my face out there on the internet? But actually, as soon as I started putting more visually pictures of me, I mean, I don't have like loads of selfies or anything, but actually pictures of me and pictures of the people I said I was doing things with in my post, as well as getting a personal tone, I noticed so much more engagement. I think people really like to get to know you as a person and as a blogger and feel like they're, talking to their friend. And I think that helps a lot from my experience anyway. My blog really grew after I started doing that.
I would agree, especially from a reader point of view. There's also an interesting kind of constant debate in the dreaded parent blogging community around kids and whether you mention your kids. So there's a lot of parent bloggers who will call them darling daughter and darling son, or they'll give them nicknames or they give them initials or whatever. I very much took the view as both someone who knows kind of SEO intimately, but also knows how digital reputation spread, that my kids are going to have to figure it out at some point anyway. So I'll use my kids' names. I won't do it a lot. I won't sort of put their full names, or I certainly won't put information about where they go to school. But my children, Robert and Freddie, I'll refer to them regularly. And engagement always increases because you then get people say, oh, how did Freddie's first day at school? It was his first day at school yesterday. And I had people who read my blog saying, how was his first day of school? And I haven't blogged about it yet at all, but they knew it was coming up and they knew what his name was, and it just probably made me a more personable sort of, a person essentially rather than a corporate face. To counter that, from a brand's perspective, again, it depends entirely on what they're trying to achieve. So if they're looking for simply coverage or traffic or links, they may care about that less. If they're looking, like Adam did, for kind of much more authentic experiences and for engagement and for perhaps recommendations, that probably will matter to them more so, I'd imagine. Cool. I think we've probably wrapped up at this point. Don't forget to fill in your blogger survey, if you please, if you've had a couple of minutes. It's not very long, and it will help us. Also, if you fill in your email address on there, we will happily get in touch with you about either stuff we do in future or if, frankly, we've got brands that might want to work with you. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, put your email address on there and we will get in touch. But thank you very much for coming. And, feel free to stick around and network with each other or go or whatever you like, really. But thank you, yes.